to order, and I want you to please give your attention to this short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Terry Ann. Excuse me, will you now conduct the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Arnrich?
Here.
Commissioner Butt?
Here.
Commissioner Glover?
Here.
Commissioner Haskew?
Here.
Commissioner Hudson?
Here.
Commissioner Mitchoff?
Here.
Commissioner Nowak?
Here.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Here.
Chair Geringer?
Here.
Representative Allen? Did not see. Representative Alternate Foley, are you attending on her behalf?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Representative Powers?
Here.
Representative Worth?
Sorry, Carrie Ann. Here.
Thank you. All members are present. Representative Alternate Foley is attending on behalf of Representative Allen, and we also have Representative Alternate Peoples in the audience and Alternate Fideli.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Again, before we move on to the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Arnrich, staff would like to pull regular agenda item 8D3, the agreement for execution of the Nissan agreement as part of the automated driving system project. Due to a revised staff recommendation, it will be brought back to the authority board meeting for consideration at the June meeting. And as I noted, the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be read by Commissioner Arnrich. Please mute your microphone, and Commissioner Arnrich, thank you for leading us.
Thank you. If you'll please join me by placing your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Too. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Terry Ann, have we received any public comment?
We have not received any written public comment.
Thank you. And if there are any members of the audience who wish to speak during this public comment section on items that are not part of the agenda, please raise your hand and Terry Ann or I will call on you. And I'm not seeing any on the main screen or in the list. So we will move on. We do not have any presentations this evening, so we will move straight to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. Are there any changes or comments from the board? Does anybody want to pull anything? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to an item on the consent calendar? Terry Ann, do you see anyone?
No public comment.
Okay, and then may I have a motion and a second?
So moved, Noack?
Thank you. Second?
Second, Haskew.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Noack and a second by Commissioner Haskew. Terry Ann, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Noack,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Yes. Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Thanks, Terry Ann.
Welcome.
So moving way farther down the agenda to our regular agenda items, we have agenda item 8 under our Administration and Projects Committee. And this item will be an action item presented by Brian Kelleher to discuss the issuance of Series 2021 bonds. Brian?
Good evening, Chair Geringer and Commissioners. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint presentation for you. And there we go. So tonight in front of you, I hope you all had a chance to go through the staff report. It was a very lengthy and detailed process of our debt program. Our debt program is a tool that we've used to produce about 90% of our projects. And part of our capital project program was leveraging money and getting outside money. And in order to do that, we had to go out and issue bonds. And so here we are tonight, based on the market conditions, we have an opportunity to refinance our bonds. We have an existing swap bond. And so we're here for the authorization, the issuance of approximately $135 million in sales tax revenue bonds. We're looking for authorization and execution and delivery of the related documents. So when we started this, we started working on this about a year ago. It's an ongoing process. The swap bonds have to be remarketed every 3 years. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's collateral risk, and then there's risk of interest rate. Just like all of you would have a mortgage, if you have a mortgage that's a higher interest rate, you would go ahead and you would see if you could refinance and get a better deal. So the market is in our favor right now, and I'm joined tonight by K&N. We also work with several attorneys, bond disclosure attorneys, a swap advisor, and they all play a role in advising the authority and meeting with us and going through and presenting with the underwriters what our best opportunity is to move forward. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for CCTA. And with the help of Melissa, we've been able to come up with a plan, get the right people in place, and we've been able to look at the market and see what the market can do for us. So Melissa, would you like to go through the authority's debt service program and take us through the next couple of slides?
Sure. Thank you, Brian, and good evening, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here. This slide just provides a snapshot of the authority's outstanding debt obligations. Several of the outstanding series are completely in fixed rate mode and provide certainty of debt service between now and the term of the tax. But we're here tonight because several of your outstanding series require maintenance, in that the 2018 A bonds are floating rate bonds, and they must be refinanced by September of this year. And those floating rate bonds are tied to the authority's interest rate swap, and that's $100 million notional. And as you may recall, we looked at a similar transaction back in 2018 when the authority had $200 million of variable rate bonds, and its interest rate swap was $200 million of notional. So tonight we're discussing kind of the remaining portion of that structure. And then also in tandem with the issuance we'll be looking at the authority's outstanding 2012 bonds. Those bonds are in fixed rate mode, but because they're callable and can be refinanced, we think there's a current market opportunity to extract some interest rate savings by refinancing those also on a fixed rate basis. Next slide, Brian. So the financing objectives for the 2021 bonds, which Brian laid out in the staff report, is first to refinance the floating rate notes. Those are $100 million outstanding and must be done so before September of this year. The recommended approach that staff has put forth is to convert those floating rate notes to fixed rate bonds and achieve a fixed rate debt service cost between now and the term of the tax. There is an alternative whereby you could refinance the existing floating rate notes into another floating rate note product, which would be more of a short-term solution, and it would also require that your interest rate swap remain outstanding. In tandem with the recommended approach on the 2018 bonds, we recommend pursuing a termination of the remaining portion of the authority's interest rate swap. And we would utilize fixed rate bonds to make to fund the termination cost of the swap. And then finally is refunding the 2012B bonds. There's just under 13 million of outstanding par, and we would refund those with new bonds to achieve a lower cost of debt service. So this is a big picture of the two series of bonds that we're proposing. One series is tax exempt, fixed rate, and that's that first column, whereby you would issue bonds not only to fund the retirement of the floating rate 2018 A bonds, but also to fund a swap termination cost. At the time of producing these numbers, the swap termination cost was approximately 25.7 million. In today's market, that's actually a little closer to 25 million. I think the numbers today would look a bit more improved. The second series of bonds is taxable, it's fixed rate, and that's issuing bonds to fund an escrow to retire the 2012B bonds. And together with some existing funds on hand, approximately 140 million of proceeds between cash and bonds would be expected. Just before we move on, the one other line that I would call the board's attention to is under the estimated results section, the true interest cost line. And note that for the tax exempt fixed rate bonds, the estimated interest cost is 1.3%. And for the aggregate financing, the estimated interest cost is 1.35%. So really a reason that underscores our recommendation to pursue a fixed rate cost of funds, just given the incredibly low interest rate environment. Next slide. So the rationale for our approach really follows and picks up with the board's direction in 2018. And we are pursuing the strategy we did in 2018 and then terminating just the remaining portion of that interest rate swap, and really to achieve an 100% fixed rate debt portfolio for the authority with no uncertainty. You know exactly what you're paying in any given year, and no need to monitor swap counterparties, variable rate debt in the future. And the market dynamics provide an opportune time for doing so and following the strategy and policy put in place by the board. And on the next slide, you'll see that we have charted on a monthly basis since early last year. The blue bars are marked by the cost to get out of the swap. I think when Brian and I were last presenting to you or to the board on the need to get in the market this year, the swap termination fee was in and around 35 million. So that was late last year. And now, you know, that termination fee has come down by approximately 10 million. The green line is marks the tax exempt interest rates and cost of funds for the authority. And you will see that over time, those have come down. They've bounced up a little bit here and there, but certainly they're at low all-time levels. And really over the last month or so have remained, tax exempt rates have been quite stable. So we did mention at the start that there is an alternative to the recommended approach, which would limit paying the swap termination fee and keeping the swap outstanding by just maintaining the floating rate index on the 2018 bonds. But with that comes consideration, and it comes with future costs and risks and a certain level of unpredictability with regard to the management of the debt program. Also, given the variable nature of the debt and the need to refinance such debt every 3 to 5 years, there's a cost involved with that. And we approximate the cost of issuance and refinancing between now and the term of the bonds to be approximately 2 million. There's also continued uncertainty around the floating rate index LIBOR, and that's an index that your bonds, your 2018 bonds are currently in, and your swap is tied to that index. And really the market, LIBOR is going away, but the market is refusing to let it go away. And as a result, there is not a lot of clarity as we're looking at decisions around the swap and how the swap counterparty will treat the LIBOR transition to a new index SOFR and what the implications would be to the authority and its cost of borrowing under the swap structure. Next slide. So this just tracks historical variable rates, and this slide is mostly to graphically depict that variable rates are variable. They bounce up and down, and there's different indices in our market, and they do not always move in tandem. And so as we start thinking about your swap being in a LIBOR mode or a SOFR mode and having variable rate bonds that are maybe in a different floating rate index mode, some of the variability gives us pause as a potential implication for cost to the authority if the swap and the bonds aren't completely in sync. So marching forward with regard to execution and changes in market conditions, we feel strongly about being able to execute in an environment where the authority would at least achieve some debt service savings relative to its existing structure. But there's a lot of variables between the tax-exempt bond market and the swap market and the cost of terminating the swap. We're doing everything we can to get into the market quickly and capture current conditions. But to the extent that the market does move away from us some, from our discussion tonight and pricing on June 2nd, It would be our recommendation to give Brian and Tim the ability to move forward with the recommended approach at some additional debt service costs, just to get you in a position to continue to follow the strategy of taking risk off the table and having 100% fixed rate debt. And so with that, the recommendation does come with some level of modest latitude of an incremental debt service cost under this approach of $3 million in aggregate, allowing both Tim and Brian the authority to execute if market conditions were to change. The next slide.
So
Brian,
thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Melissa. Tim and I would not make this decision on our own. We would reach out to the chair. We would reach out to the board members and make sure, if things start to go a different direction, we would make the best choice for the authority and get the proper approval for this. Approving of these bond documents allows us a lot of flexibility if the market should move away from us. Right now, things are looking really good for the authority. And right here is just a snapshot overview of the Measure J capital program requirements. So right now, our sales tax revenue is projected to be about $95 million in the budget. I had worked with HDL, who advises us on our sales tax. They were thinking it was going to come in closer to $77 million or $97 million. And then today, I just got the sales tax numbers that would complete the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year for CCTA, and it's $77 million already. Typically, in the fourth quarter, over the last several years, we get about $23 million. Depending on how it turns out in the next 3 months, we potentially could be pretty close to $99 to $100 million of revenue for this year. 42.5% is set aside for the capital program. The rest is for the program section. And if you look here at the bottom, if you look to the 2022, all the different colors represent all of our debt. And we have level debt service all the way out through 2034, which is the end of the Measure J sales tax. And so you can see that we're right up on the 42.5% with that extra money. It's going to go there. So that space in between towards the end, that could be used to pay down additional capital. That could be used to create more projects. So we'll see what happens in the next 12 years. And so our timeline. So we met with the APC committee on May 6th. We're sitting here with you tonight to talk about this, to seek approval. Today, Tim and I and Melissa and the KNN team, we met with the rating agencies of Fitch and S&P. We had really great decisions. We have really good results. We have really well-managed financials, and things look really good for CCTA. So we're looking to price the bonds, as Melissa said, on June 2nd, and it'll close the bonds on June 21st, approximately. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. If there's any comments or questions.
So I see Commissioner Hudson has a question, and any others, raise your literal or virtual.
Actually, I wanted you to go back to page 3 if you could, Brian, on this thing. And I wanted to folks first of all, make sure I understood it. And second of all, ask 2 questions on it. I'm going to assume that APC thought this was pretty good. Maybe it's 4. Page 4. I know I'm going to blow it. Let's just stay with this minute. Yes, thank you. I'm seeing that you want to go for 200 million. Is that correct? And you're going to get rid of the 2018 swap termination, which make me feel a lot better. I want to ask a question about the 2012 bond, the refund. It says 13 million. Is that how much we owe? When is it paid off if we don't refund it?
So the swap termination is based when we went to the board in 2018, it was a $200 million. We took out about $100 million of the debt that was that was closer. We left the long-term debt out there for the debt service payment. So now we're asking to eliminate the final $100 million of the swap. And based off of interest rates today, the 2012 B bonds have about $12.5 million of debt remaining that'll be paid off. Right now, we're paying interest only on it, and it runs through 2034. So by lowering the interest rate, we're able to capitalize on some savings, just like you would if you have an outstanding debt on a mortgage or something like that, and you're paying 5%, and the opportunity now is to get it at 2.1%, you would make that change.
Okay, Brian, I'll stop you right there. Once you told me it was interest only, that pretty much took care of where I was going with it. I just thought that if we had been paying on it, which we haven't, because we're only doing interest only at this point, that I would say, leave it there and let's adjust, take more on the next one, get rid of the swap and just pay it. But if it's interest only through 2034, I don't have to ask any more questions. I'll just wait until Newell makes the motion. Did I miss it, Newell, or is that about right?
You're pretty close. It's a little simpler than that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Arnridge.
I just want to add that as the chair of the APC, myself and Sue Nowak were a subcommittee to do a deep dive on this. As you know, Sue's background is specifically in this area. And as much as I have been trying to get us out for since 2005 out of these, we are at the point of time, given that we have an event horizon in 2034, as Measure J concludes, that we are now aligning, and to align exactly where we should be. We will have 100% of our debt paid off. We don't have to have that risk of having a $20, $30, $40 million hole in our budget that we got to keep holding. After we refinance this, not only will we save money, but now we have zero risk left. As you know, there's always this, and it's complicated to understand, but we have this gap where the face value is 100 million, but you have a negative value of 25, 35, and at $40 million, we have to put up a cash security against that, which we've done in the past. But even not putting it up, we still have to keep an eye to hold a reserve cash against this. So this frees up everything, and it's exactly what you want to do. It's like having a mortgage at 3.5%, and now you have an opportunity to end up with an effective rate of 1.35. Sign me up as fast as we can. We're actually putting out of business our financial advisors because this is the last transaction we'll have with Measure J. It's pretty hard to believe that we'd ever be below 1.35, but this is exactly where we wanted to be. We're going to save money. We're going to stop this refinancing and spending upwards of another $2 million. But more importantly, that one chart that was there that showed a couple of spikes, Melissa was showing that to make a point. We've had LIBOR rate, and now it's either the SOFR or Smith. I always pronounce it wrong. SOFR. Right. Thank you. That those have had spikes of 5%. Even LIBOR didn't go up that high. So as those spike and go different directions, we're at the inverse of those. So this gets us out of the risk business. I hope nobody ever does one of these things again. It puts us in that position where on the chart we saw the colored horizontal layers of our debt structure for repayments, and the dotted line that shows there's a gap there because every one of our costs are finally fixed as they should be. So, one, thank you, Sue. Thank you to Brian and our financial advisors. We have the right people at the right time to get us on track. We don't ever have to talk about this again. And so after any other comments, I would be delighted to get us out of the refinancing business and make a motion.
So thank you, Brian, for taking down the screen. I saw Commissioner Nowak raise her hand and Commissioner Hudson. So Commissioner Nowak.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to Newell's comments. Historically, interest rate swaps were used to sort of mimic a fixed rate debt If you had floating rate debt, interest rate swaps were meant to mimic that. And one of the issues, one of the other benefits of doing what we're doing now is what's being proposed is eliminating a difference in rates, this LIBOR rate versus SOFR. Before it was LIBOR to LIBOR swap and the rates on the bonds. That's not going forward, and that adds in a level of risk that you don't want to add to already what risk you have on that. So there's a lot of benefits to this. Historically low interest rates, fixing for the remaining term, I think that's a great, and then eliminating this other risk that we were potentially facing that we even haven't had to face in the past. So, for all of those reasons, I will second Newell's motion.
Okay, Commissioner Hudson. Thank you, Commissioner. Hudson.
I would third it, but I think this is really a question through the chair to APC or to this group, these two members in particular. We did a brief touch on where we thought sales tax was going. I personally believe that it's minimally going to go there. The real question is, should we be doing this at 200, or is there another number that was even suggested higher?
We're doing it 135, I believe.
Okay, but the 200 million thingy-majiggy, whatever we have, should we be doing it for more? Because we believe, or I do, I don't know how you do, that we're going to be taking more in, and I'll leave it at that. Other than that, I'm voting for it.
Go ahead, Commissioner Arnridge.
Yeah, I would say, Dave, no. And here's the reason why. Because of the formula at 42.5% that we get, one, we know we can pay off our debt, absolute comfort. We have coverage of over 2.0, 2.05, I think it is, which means we have more than double of the income. So our rating is going to be really good. That's why we're getting a estimated 1.35 effective rate. We should do cash. And the reason why is if we have projects that are lined up and we're getting towards the end, you would waste all that money on interest because you'd have to compress it so much over a short period of time. And let's say we had an excess of $5 million a year. We wait 3 years and you have $15 million. You can fund, look at our list, you could pick 2 projects on there and they'd be funded. So letting us go, no more debt financing, let it go to cash. It's in present value right now. We're stronger by doing that.
Thank you. Any other?
So that was a motion.
I think we have that. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Mitchoff.
I just want to say I'm glad we have very smart people who know what we're all talking about. As long as we're saving money and we're eliminating risk, I'm going with you guys that know what you're talking about.
Thank you. Well said.
Well, I do want to comment, we are saving money, but there is this little pricing risk. It's certainly less than when we talked about it at APC or when Newell and I originally talked about it. As we get closer to that pricing date, that risk is certainly reduced and to the extent rates haven't changed. But there is a little bit of risk if rates go up a little bit. But that's why APC recommended that $3 million mark. That in our minds, we thought that was sort of worth eliminating the risk. So it's not in all cases does it eliminate, does it create savings. So I just want to be really clear because I don't want people counting on what I'm saying and then not be correct about it. So
well, I go with what you say.
And we can be reassured that Brian has been looking at this every minute of every day since, and I'm sure Melissa is right there looking over his shoulder, well, from afar and wearing a mask. But are there any other questions or comments? Terry Ann, did we receive any written public comment on this item?
No written public comment.
And if there are any members of the public who would like to speak to this item, please raise your hand, virtual or real. Terry Ann, do you see anyone?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Arnridge and a second by Commissioner Nowak. Terry Ann, will you please call the roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Arnridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Butt?
Yes.
Commissioner Glover?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchoff?
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And thanks again to Commissioner Arnrich and Commissioner Nowak, as everyone has pointed out, working very closely with Melissa from KNN and our very own Brian Kelleher. This is very exciting. And as I noted earlier, our team will be watching and we'll make sure that we follow all of the market and make sure that we get this across the finish line. So thank you all very much. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, 8B is an informational item that will be presented by Stephanie Hu and Lindsay Willis to provide a program and project update on Innovate 680. So Stephanie and Lindsay, welcome and take it away.
Well, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Stephanie Hu, Director of Project CCTA, and also the Innovate 680 Program Manager. This evening, we're continuing with part 2 of our Innovate 680 mini-series. Last month, staff gave an overview of the program, and today we would like to provide a presentation on the behavioral science survey results. And with that, I'll hand it off to Lindsay.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Lindsay Willis, Director of External Affairs for the Authority. And this evening, we're really excited to give you an update on the behavior science study we spoke about a little bit at our last meeting. And my apologies in advance to those members who are on the Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee, because you already had a pretty thorough peek at what we're going to present again tonight. For those of you who aren't part of that effort, the public engagement efforts for Innovate 680 include conducting a behavior science study. And as many of you know, there are many sources of data available to us about how people travel along the 680 corridor. We have origin and destination data, average speeds, travel times, but that data doesn't always tell us the full story. It can tell us what happens, but not why, not why people make the choices they make and kind of what different things are happening in their life that has them make those choices. So that's what we're really trying to get at through this behavior science effort. And this evening, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Krawick with Convey Inc. She's leading the public engagement and research efforts with the assistance of Root Solutions and EMC Research, who are both also in the audience in case you have any super technical questions that we can't answer. And we're really excited to share with you what we've learned from our recent survey. So Rebecca, I know we're gonna share our screen. Also, for those of you who have had a chance to look at the handout packet, the entire presentation we're sharing is in the handout packet tonight. So you can also use that as a reference, as I know sometimes the screen can be a little tiny. So with that, Rebecca, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Lindsay. Can everyone hear me and can everyone see a slide that says behavior science update? Okay, great.
Yes.
So thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Happy to be here to share some of our exciting research with you. And what I'm going to do first is just start with a few quick overview slides about the research in general, and then we're going to take a dive into some of the data. So first of all, just to recap, our behavior research scope included some key deliverables, including landscape analysis reports on each of the Innovate 680 projects, which basically helped us identify some gaps in available research, a behavior drivers analysis phase, which is where the user analysis survey fits in, which we're going to talk about today. And then finally, we're going to prepare some intervention recommendations that will help us build better projects and encourage mode shift. So first of all, that first deliverable was the landscape analysis reports, as I mentioned, and these reports were extremely helpful in showing us where there were gaps in what was available worldwide and nationwide. And the gaps in the research is what we were hoping to fill with our user analysis survey. So we designed our survey specifically for the Innovate 680 program to collect detailed transportation behavior data to support our program. And we gathered information on a lot of different topics, but mostly about how people travel and how people might like to travel. Now, a few key points about our methodology, just to show you how we administered the survey. First of all, we used an address-based sampling system, which involved mailing invitations to a random selection of 50,000 households along the corridor. And we did a desired radius around that corridor, and it was administered between November 2020 and January 2021. Our survey was offered online and in print and in multiple languages. It took approximately 20 minutes to complete, and it covered multiple topics of interest to the Innovate 680 program. And one of the true strengths and differentiators of this study is that we have the ability to sort of dig into some psychological components like attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions about travel in the corridor. Our goal was to get 1,500 surveys completed, and we reached that goal in early January. We were also very pleased to see that out of the survey respondents, 1,000 of them agreed to be contacted for future research, and 950 of that 1,000 agreed to link their survey data to future travel data. This will be immensely helpful to the project team in demonstrating the success of our efforts on the Innovate 680 program. At the end of the survey, we gave respondents a chance to provide feedback, and most of what we received was very positive, as you can see here. Corridor residents in general just seem very excited to be participating in the future of transportation in Contra Costa, so that's great news. Now, a few key demographics about the respondents to our survey. So first of all, our survey takers were well distributed among male and female, and their ages were mostly over the age of 35. Now, we looked into census data for the county, and we find that these demographic data points are very representative of the county as a whole. The majority of our respondents are homeowners, with an average home having roughly 2 of everything: 2 people, 2 smartphones, 2 driver's licenses, and 2 cars. Interestingly, the households have 1.5 bikes, which I didn't add here because it didn't fit my theme of 2. Digging just a little deeper into smartphone ownership, our survey showed that 97% of corridor residents own a phone and 92% own a phone countywide. And just to be clear, by smartphone, what we mean are those phones that can connect to the internet. All right, now we've covered some of that intro information about our respondents. We're going to take just a closer look at some of our target audiences. And the first one is that 70% of corridor residents that use the corridor once per week or more. This is a very broad category that we're going to narrow into a smaller target group a little bit later in the presentation. So the most commonly used mode for this target audience was driving alone in a personal vehicle, as shown here. But we want to note that respondents were asked to select all pre-COVID modes that were used. So that tells us that driving alone was certainly the most popular answer, but people did use other modes during COVID or pre-COVID as well. It was encouraging to see, however, that 68% of those drivers have at least some interest in driving less. And that's identified by the 2 bars on the right. It was also interesting to see why respondents wanted to drive less, and concern for the environment ranked highest, as you can see here, but it was followed closely by not wanting to sit in traffic and reducing stress. We also asked people to write any possible perceived benefit they could think of to using alternative modes. And then we coded those answers into the categories shown here. Again, environmental impact ranked higher than others. We also asked those who are not interested in driving less why they're not interested. And here's how their responses were ranked. I just want to quickly draw attention to the 32% of these drivers who do not see a way to drive less. That's the 3rd circle from the right there. This was an interesting parallel to another stat that is shown on my next slide. And this slide shows people who are interested in driving less. And again, 1/3 of them don't believe it is possible for them. This is really interesting to us because it suggests that a similar percentage for both groups, those who are interested in driving less and those who are not interested in driving less, have a similar perceived ability around this topic. So we feel that this perception is definitely something we can work with and tackle similarly for both groups. Here are just some quick comments submitted by survey takers about why they believe it's not possible for them to take alternative modes. And we'll certainly be looking deeply into these barriers and figuring out ways to reduce those barriers. Now, I want to highlight an interesting study that gets at that perceived ability that we were just looking at. So a few years ago in Durham, North Carolina, they did a study where they used a combination of incentive programs to get people out of their cars and into transit. With one program, personalized route maps were emailed to people to show how they can use alternative modes of transportation to get from their home to their work. Another program offered a chance at a weekly cash prize for taking the bus. And both strategies showed or proved to be very popular. And actually, among those who received the personalized commute map, there was a 12% reduction in driving to work alone, compared to those who did not receive that personalized map. And what we saw as a group across our mode shift research was that a personalized system or map or something personalized for drivers really helped them shift modes. It was even a bigger incentive than cash. So this slide confirms from a motivation perspective that between our larger group of corridor residents there on the left and our subset of people interested in driving less, money is not really the most important factor. Essentially, cost isn't really what's keeping from people using alternative modes, but really time is actually a more important factor. So we've explored a bit about that larger target audience of drivers in the corridor, and now we want to narrow that audience and look a little closer at a subset that we might have the most success with behavior change. And we've given this high priority audience a name. We're calling them our champions of change. And these are daily drivers who are interested in driving less. So this is compared to the other audience we talked about where they take the corridor once per week or more. Our champions take the corridor daily, but they're interested in driving less. And this high impact group makes up 44% of all of our corridor drivers. So our champions tend to live in cities throughout the corridor, with Concord and Clayton being the outliers with the highest and the lowest percentages of champions. Our champions appear to be clustered in the middle age groups, with 70% of them being within the age range of 35 to 64. We also want to note that, again, the champion gender split was pretty much right down the middle, 50-50, men and women. Now the question becomes, what behaviors or modes are we interested in changing from and changing to? So as we saw above, the favored mode among our target audiences, including our champions, is driving alone in a personal vehicle, better known as single occupancy vehicles, as many of us know. And these are major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and poor air quality. A typical passenger vehicle emits about 4.6 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. And it takes 6 acres of US forest land to counteract this emission. So switching away from SOVs to alternative modes would have important and positive impacts on congestion and the environment. Studies have shown that public transit, carpooling, walking, or biking all help reduce the volume of motorized vehicles on the road. So with this in mind, our goal is to take our champions of change and motivate them to shift modes. And that helps us narrow our questions just a bit to what modes would yield the most new users and what modes would yield the least. So we asked our champions about their likelihood of using a variety of new and alternative modes. And here's how they answered. So first of all, I am not able to advance at the moment. Okay, hold on. Let me try one different method, sorry. There we go. Our champion group responded that they would be most interested in trying telecommuting, and carpooling with household members, but private bus, shuttle, BART, and public bus and rail were close behind the top two. The modes least likely or of least interest to our champions included bike share and vanpool. We also explored what percentage of our champions have used alternative modes at least some of the time in the past. So that could have been 1 time or 2 times or 3 times. We feel that we can work with these groups to maintain or increase the use of each of these modes. So we understand it's not just about getting brand new users to try something, but to get those people who are over that first ride hurdle to keep using that mode of travel. Finally, among our champions, we were curious about the perceived barriers to using alternative modes. We also wanted to see how it looked against our interested driver group, which was that 68% we highlighted earlier in the deck. So this slide highlights the perceived barrier of availability of alternative modes. There were several perceived barriers that we looked into, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but the big takeaway with these next few slides is that with each of the perceived barriers, the champions and the interested drivers ranked almost similarly. And when the barrier went down in popularity, or it was less of a barrier for people, the percentages fell the same, almost the same for each. So this is the perceived barrier of availability. Next, we have the quality of travel. Again, fairly high, but very similar between the two groups. Then comfort is where the barrier started to fall. So it's less of a barrier to our champions of change and our interested drivers. Same with safety. Personal circumstances also ranked sort of low. And then finally, cost, which is also reflected in some of the earlier stats that I showed you. Cost is not necessarily a main barrier. So these barriers are things that through the Innovate 680 program and its projects, we're going to work to mitigate so that these perceived barriers are no longer an issue for those who want to shift modes. So that segues sort of nicely into my final section here, where we want to give a snapshot of how our behavior research is helping us to develop the Innovate 680 projects better so that the barriers are lessened and mode shift is made easier and even more attractive. I'm focused today on 3 of the 6 projects, but there's more to come on all 6 of the projects. So first, our behavior research showed that nearly half of corridor residents combined different modes of transportation for a single trip in the year prior to COVID. Our Shared Mobility Hubs project is designed to make combining modes easier. We learned that a majority of our audience is very interested in using hubs and that they're willing to walk or bike up to 15 minutes to get to a hub. That 67% want frequent and reliable transit, and 58% are interested in on-site security. We also asked potential new riders what transit features would be most interesting to them, and the top 3 were free Wi-Fi, comfortable seating, and power outlets or USB ports. So by adding or advertising these features, we can increase transit ridership and persuade people out of their cars. Finally, autonomous shuttles are a cornerstone element in the Automated Driving Systems project, and they're also key to ensuring that no one is left behind in our communities of concern. Through our survey, we learned that 72% are interested in using AV shuttles when they're available. They also have some concerns, however, like wait times and safety. So again, the Innovate project teams will be working to alleviate the concerns and take advantage of this impressive interest level in this alternative mode. So we'd like to close with just a quick look back at our champions of change. We've calculated that if we can get our champions to cut their driving in half, we could reduce the number of drivers on the road by 22%. This translates into a reduction of roughly 37,000 cars per day. And we understand, this is certainly an aspirational number. It's not going to be easy. I would equate it to getting a toddler to eat a salad 3 days a week. Trying to get someone out of their car 3 days a week would be about the same probably. But any shift would help us meet program goals. It would reduce congestion give us better air, safer roads. And with this research that we're conducting, I think that we can come up with an action plan to help us achieve our Innovate goals. And with that, I'd love to, first of all, thank you for your time and open it up to questions.
Rebecca, can you stop sharing your screen?
Sure can.
Unmute before somebody yells it. I yelled it at myself. First, thank you very much for the presentation, Rebecca. And I see Commissioner Arnerich has his hand up.
Rebecca, I just want to say, I've been around a little while. This is one of the best presentations I've ever seen in the subject area. Your clarity, your points, you didn't oversell this. We've been oversold many times. You were honest. You have integrity in this. This is an exciting opportunity. And I tell you what, 72% of the people who want to ride an autonomous vehicle, that is unbelievably exciting. So thank you for what you're doing. You're headed in the right direction. And any part of this that can come to fruition through all the things that we're planning is so exciting. So I just really want to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, I would add to that, Noel, that she finished well. So many times you get halfway through this stuff and you're doing everything well, and then you get to the end and it's like, I know what'd she say? It actually caught my attention at the end because something you said, but I don't want to go there. I want to go back to what Noel's talking about. This autonomous vehicle, I start looking at things where its real value is not on a day like today, but the last 10 weeks leading up to Christmas is half our sales tax. That's fairly important to an organization like CCTA. And you've got it where it's raining and you had to park so far away because our legislatures come up with the genius idea that we don't need parking spaces. And here's an autonomous vehicle that can take you to, a parking structure that's there, so you don't have to pay 4 times as much now. And the value in that number 72%, ooh, that's high. But when you actually put people in there that are buying things, when it's raining or it's dark or something like that, then all of a sudden it means a heck of a lot to you. And that security question you brought up halfway through your presentation really comes into play. So, I mean, it's exciting. I hope we can turn this into something while we're still young or whatever we call ourselves, but it would be, it'd be nice to see some of the stuff actually working. So, cut me off and tell me we're going to put this thing on the road, Lindsay.
Well, I'm going to tell you that we're learning, a tremendous amount from surveys like this and the research, and it is really helping to inform some of the design of our projects. And I think it's also given us a little bit of a roadmap to figure out, which of our residents are more likely to try more modes. So this has been, valuable to us as a project team and a communications team. And, I think we're starting to explore what this could help us do on other corridors in the county as well, just because of the value we're seeing from this research.
Well, I would also suggest you go by City Center in midday and watch the operation they have, because it's just constant streaming, cars, vans, whatever, picking people up, getting their food, and they're gone. And within 4 or 5 years, you're going to have over 1,000 homes within walking distance or that short shuttle from there. I mean, is this the future or something that the model that, Brad Paul was talking about we should be looking at? So let's get into the other good stuff.
Great, thank you. And we will ask. So Terry Ann, I was going to go into my thank you speech and almost forgot a couple of other steps. Terry Ann, did we receive any written public comment?
No written public comment was received.
Thank you. And are there any members of the public who are in attendance tonight who would like to make a comment on this item? Please raise your hand. I don't see any hands or
no comment
or virtual. And so moving on, Thank you very much. I think that Newell and Dave both stated it very well. And Rebecca, thank you, Lindsay, Stephanie, for our continuing mini-series and for that information presented in a very thoughtful, and I like the humor, here and there as well, and feeding salads to toddlers. So anyway, thank you very much. And we will look forward to our next installation of the Innovate 680 at our next meeting. So moving on to agenda item number 8C. This is also an informational item, and it is also presented by Stephanie Hu to provide a status update on the State Route 239 project. And Stephanie's already ready to go.
Thanks, Chair. That confirms you see the slide, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Again, Stephanie Hu, Director of Projects, and we're here tonight to provide a brief overview and status update for the State Route 239 project. So the State Route 239 project is currently in the preliminary engineering and environmental clearance phase. The project team includes CCTA, the county, Caltrans, and the consultant team WSP. CCTA is the implementing agency for the project. I'm overseeing the project development with Francis Lowe as the project manager. Francis is here with me this evening to present this item, and he is part of our consultant project management team, AMG. The county received a federal earmark for the project back in 2005 and began the planning work. So the county has transferred the project to CCTA for implementation. The county continues to be a key member for the project team. They are contributing the local match for the federal funds. Caltrans is also a key partner as they are the lead agency for the CEQA NEPA document. And then in May of 2020, the authority entered into contract with the consulting firm WSP to complete the current preliminary engineering in the environmental clearance phase. We're also coordinating and partnering with other entities that are in the project area. This map shows the project area shaded in yellow, and it covers Contra Costa, Alameda, and San Joaquin counties. The project area is located south of Brentwood and north of Tracy, including communities like Mountain House and Byron. The study area, or the project study area, is an envelope area that covers the alternatives. Just a brief history on the project. SR 239 was legislatively adopted in 1959 as a potential roadway linking Highway 4 from Brentwood to Interstate 205 or Interstate 580 west of Tracy. The county received a federal earmark in 2005. And in 2012, the project was transferred to the authority to implement. And since then, a feasibility study and a Caltrans project initiation document were completed. In 2020, CCTA began the current preliminary design and environmental clearance phase. This is a schedule where we're headed, which is very much dependent on funding availability. In the project initiation document that was completed in 2015, there were a few alternatives identified. We'll be studying these alternatives in more detail in the engineering sense, as well as for environmental impacts in this current phase of work. We started the current phase not so long ago, or just a few months ago, but we wanted to provide an update and an overview of the project tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Francis, who will provide more on project details and the current scope of work.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good evening, commissioners. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So, can we go back one? Just as a recap, I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit about what had been identified previously as potential alternatives for the project. On the screen there on the right-hand side, you're going to see a little picture that shows a number of colored lines. So the main, as Stephanie mentioned, the legislation basically calls for a connection between Highway 4 in Brentwood and an area west of Tracy. So if you look at the screen, at the top, you could see the purple line, essentially the project running along the same, pretty much along the existing Vasco Road. Yep. And then once it gets past Camino de Ebro, then the previous studies identified different alternatives, which are shown in red. One of those basically goes on the west side and south of the airport. And then there are a couple alternatives that goes on to the east side. And then there is also one other alternative, which is kind of the brownish line that runs along the existing Byron Highway into 205 and the Tracy area. So next slide, please. So the project has, the studies had been completed a number of years ago, and one of the early things that we have been doing in the last year or so is to generally update the purpose and need for the project. Why are we even building the project? And obviously, a lot of the conditions have changed. So this is some tentative purpose and need, and as we move the project further along, we will have the public would have an opportunity to refine some of these purpose and need items. And I'm just going to run them down quickly. Improving mobility, supporting interregional goods movement, especially between the Central Valley and some of the newer logistics development in the Oakley area, and then support planned development, whether it's around the airport area or again in East Contra Costa. Something that we've heard from many residents again and again is to basically take all the commute traffic away from the town of Byron. And also we want to look at providing the opportunity for alternative travel modes, just kind of a hot topic as we just follow right after Innovate 680, looking for ways to minimize carbon emission and climate change issues. Improve access to the airport at Byron. As we know, Byron Airport right now has pretty poor connection to roadway, and we want to be able to improve that and also be able to use that as an evacuation route for any major disaster, and do that in a way that protects all the natural resources in the area, including the habitat, the conservancy land, and all that. So next slide, please. So what are we going to be covering in terms of the current contract on the preliminary engineering and the environmental document? As we talked about just a minute ago, we're going to refine the purpose and need. And we're actually doing a lot of surveys. We have actually been doing that recently. And then we would also further refine the study alternatives that we looked at earlier. Some of that is likely going to change as we get to know, to get more information about the area. And then we would start a formal scoping process as required by the CEQA and the NEPA, essentially the California and the federal environmental legislations. And then we, based on the study alternatives that we would identify, working with the public, we would conduct the necessary analysis and then produce the environmental document so that the project can move ahead. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yep, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, can we go back one? Thank you. So as we know, the project is fairly significant. From end to end is roughly about 17 miles long. It probably isn't quite as scenic as the drive in Carmel, but I think it does go through a lot of very nice areas. So one of the things that we know is that we are not going to be able to try and construct the project from end to end in one single project. So we would be looking at implementing the project in phases. And one of the first phase that we are most likely going to focus on is the improvement around the Byron area, both to connect the airport and also take traffic away from the town of Byron. Next slide, please. So essentially, the beige dotted line is kind of what we are looking at, is potentially connecting Vasco Road to Byron Highway. And if we kind of go back to what we were looking at earlier about the purpose and need which is reproduced on the right-hand side of the screen. The brownish, reddish color bullets are things that the initial phase will address. In particular, the two items that are in bold are where this initial phase is going to really do a very good job of. So we want to make sure that the initial segment is going to produce a lot of benefits. And that's why we are looking at this as the possible initial segment. Next slide, please. So I want to just take a minute to talk about the current work focus. As the traffic movements and all those have changed over the years, we are updating our traffic studies to make sure that we understand how traffic is going to be moving because of the different land use and also the new e-commerce business is changing how traffic actually operates. And then at the same time, we are coordinating our projects with other significant projects in the area. There are two in particular that I'd just like to touch upon. One is a major pipeline that's being planned on and likely going to be constructed fairly soon in connection with the Los Vaqueros Reservoir. And then the other big project, in fact, is a humongous project that we are working with at the same time is the Delta Conveyance project that would basically be handled by the State Department of Water Resources. We are also trying to map out the habitat and other environmental conditions in the area. And we also want to look at the potential changes and implications of recent legislative change, and the biggest one being VMT. When some of the feasibility study were being undertaken, the VMT requirement was totally different. And at the same time, like we talked about earlier, we want to kind of focus a little more on workable mobility solutions. The area is not very, it's not densely populated by any stretch. And so we would want to make sure that we come up with something that makes sense and that's also cost effective. And so the alternatives that we're going to come up with may differ substantially with what were previously identified. And part of that is going to be driven by the public outreach and review process that we're going to go through. There will be a good number of opportunity for public outreach and public input. And we've actually had a number of meetings with the Byron Mac already. We've also met with the Mountain House district. So at the same time, so yeah, there will be plenty of opportunities, and I'm sure you guys will be hearing from us a lot more in the future. Next slide, please. In terms of data collection that we've been doing, we've been basically collecting existing condition drawings, utility information, the traffic information, environmental survey, and the typical engineering surveys. Next slide, please. So one of the things that some of you guys might have heard from property owners in the area is we have sent out permission to enter so that we can go onto private property to basically see what's out there. In particular, a lot of our focus is looking at biological resources, like different type of plants and flowers and stuff. So next slide, please. And this will be done in a number of different seasons because different plants would pop up in different time of the year. We've just completed our spring survey. And so later on in the summer, the team will go out again to survey the area. And at the same time, we also want to make sure that we capture and delineate all the wetlands in the area because we want to be mindful of where they are so we minimize any impacts on all those habitats. Next slide, please. So as I talked about earlier, the corridor is 17 miles long. And one of the things that we're going to want to do is to identify where the corridor should go, and based on that, and then come up with an initial usable segment that would produce results and deliver benefits to the residents. At the same time, we want to make sure that once the corridor is identified, we will work with the local planning agencies, whether it's Contra Costa County or whether it's San Joaquin County or Alameda County, to try and incorporate the corridor into the local planning document. So that way the needed right-of-way would be preserved as the project moves forward. And again, like I talked about earlier, the biggest focus is going to be on delivering an initial fundable segment that people can benefit from. So with that, I hand it back to Stephanie.
Thanks, Francis. So this table shows the current funding plan for the project. The project has, like I mentioned earlier, a federal earmark and local match that's provided by the county that are funding the current and the previous phases of work. We have $10 million in Regional Measure 3 or RM3 that can go towards partially funding the design or right-of-way phases of an initial phase that Francis was just talking about. And then as with project of this size, it will take various funding sources and grants to complete the funding gaps, and staff will continue to look for funding opportunities as the project moves forward. The project has a website and a project fact sheet to inform the public of our project status, and we have had and will continue to have stakeholder meetings at key project milestones to gather input and question as we progress through the current project phase. And also, we will continue to come back to the board, in the future to provide an update as we move along with the project. And with that, that concludes our presentation. This is again an informational item, so no action needed from the board, but we'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you. And thank you for taking down the PowerPoint. And I was going to ask any questions or comments, and I see Commissioner Hudson waving his hand.
Just practicing my wave. The oddity that I didn't see in here, when you talked about other projects or other agencies that were going on, I forget what that 2 or 3 lines back. Have you talked to anybody at Valley Link to see where they're going or any of their changes about it? Because I think we backed away from the station at Greenville and went on the other side, and that traffic is going to definitely be affected by, they're going to love this going in. They're definitely going to have more people from Mountain House and River Island taking their train and probably parking alongside our road. Have you talked to them at all? I didn't see the alignment on there.
Yeah, Stephanie, you want me to address that one?
Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say we do have plans to meet with them, but you go ahead.
Yeah, so we've obviously we are very aware of Valley Link. We've actually I talked to one of the key staff person, Rick Rattray, and part of our discussion that we had, and I think if you recall, one of the things that we talked about is providing other mobility options. So we are looking at potentially working with the city of, the future city of Mountain House, I should say, in trying to provide a better connection between along the future 239 to connect Mountain House to the Valley Link station in Mountain House, which is probably a good maybe 2 to 3 miles to the south of the current town of Mountain House. Is on the south side of 580. So
south side?
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's on the south side of 580.
Wow, I missed where it goes underneath the fruit. I'm sorry to jump in there, but I know there's a station going into River Island, which is on the north side, and into Lathrop. But then we must have, that thing goes in and out so much. You're right. It's not the train track that you probably have to go over 2 or 3 times now on Byron Highway, but it is on the south side.
Yeah, that's where the Mountain House station is located, and so again, this is really early yet, and that's why we kind of want to talk to both Mountain House and Valley Link, and with the best solution in terms of improving access to the station, so that when we are designing the 239 project, we would be complementing all the other transit improvements in the area.
I'm looking at it as acquisition. I think it's an opportunity. And I mean, I'd probably bring Tim along also and bring Michael Tree into this because you're talking to the right guy as far as the nuts and bolts. But once Michael learns that there's a political end to this that benefits two people, and you're also involved with the Innovate 680, it's amazing how fast things might get done. But yeah, that's got to acquire the land before you can build anything. And once they figure it's worth money, all of a sudden it's like they think you've got a potential 14-story Taj Mahal out there or whatever. But it's just farm, grab it all.
Thank you. Commissioner Arnrich.
Stephanie, thanks for the update. It's always exciting. This project's obviously been around before all of us were here doing this. But you know, when about 5 years back, when this kind of came to fruition and started to grow again, we had a couple of our environmental stakeholder groups that were really against this. They were against any new roads. But you know, the world's changed as we've gotten into VMT, vehicles mile traveled, and how that works. You know, reducing congestion itself reduces vehicle mile traveled. It's, you know, about reducing pollution and things. I didn't see any comment. Where is our environmental stakeholders? Are they in the game with us on this? Are they willing to listen, or is there just a line in the dirt? I'm not sure where we're at.
Yeah, we plan to, as we're preparing for the scoping meetings, we plan to meet with these environmental groups to better understand where they are at. Like you said, it's been 5 years, and so I mean, not sure if their view have changed, but it'd be good to reconnect. And also, like you said, the new climate of VMT. Just you know, our project is trying to focus or find ways to include some active transportation elements. But your point is well taken. We are going to meet with them early and probably frequent to making sure we understand their concerns and as we continue moving forward with the project. And yeah, VMT is on our minds as with our other projects like Northbound Express Lane. So yeah, I don't know, Francis, you want to say anything?
Well, thank you. And we look forward to hearing that update. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments or questions from the board? Terry Ann, have we received any written public comment?
No written public comment.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? Do you see any hands, Terry? No.
No public comment.
So again, this was an informational item, and I know over the next several years, we'll continue to hear about this. And so Francis, thank you very much. And Stephanie, thank you for staying on this and for keeping us updated.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next item on the agenda is a two-part action item presented by Jack Hall to discuss contract awards for the Innovate 680 automated driving system project. And just as a reminder, item D3 for the Nissan agreement has been pulled and will be brought back to the June meeting. So Jack, you want to take it away on the two items that we will discuss tonight.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair Geringer and Commissioners. My name is Jack Hall, and I'm the ITS Connected Autonomous Vehicle Program Manager for CCTA. This evening, we are asking for the approval of two agreements related to our Innovate 680 Automated Driving System project, and we'll take them one at a time. First is agreement number 562 with Cello Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless to provide data gathering, data storage, data management, and wireless infrastructure. Data sharing is a key goal of the ADS project, not only because public acceptance requires confidence in the technology and its safety, but also because data sharing enables all partners to work collaboratively with each other towards achieving the goals of the project. Verizon will provide the following emerging products and services. 1, cellular vehicle to everything, C-V2X, Verizon's wireless network multi-edge compute to support broadcast messages to vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles, utilizing sophisticated computer vision on smart cameras and information from the traffic cabinet. 2, Verizon Connect. Deploy Verizon's cloud-based fleet management products and telematics to test vehicles' location, speed diagnostics, and driver safety metrics. And 3, the Data Insights platform. Verizon will provide its Data Insights platform to offer a cloud-based central data depository as a managed service to serve as the data management platform for the project. The estimated cost of Verizon's scope of services is $1,921,163, which Verizon will contribute $805,163 of in-kind services. Under agreement number 562, Verizon will be compensated in the amount of $1,116,000 from the ADS project funding sources, which are federal grant funds and state local partnership funds. No Measure J funds are on this project. With that, staff seeks authorization for the chair to execute agreement number 562 with Verizon in an amount not to exceed $1,116,000 to provide data gathering, data storage, data management, and wireless infrastructure services, and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. And that concludes my first report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from or comments from the board? Seeing no hands. Terry Ann, did we receive any written public comment?
No written public comment.
And any members of the public who wish to speak to this item, please raise your hand now. And not seeing anyone.
No
Do
hands
I
raised.
do I have a motion to approve this agreement?
So moved. Noack?
Commissioner Nowak, and a second?
Askew.
Thank you. So we had a motion by Commissioner Nowak and a second by Commissioner Haskew. Terry Ann, will you please call the vote, roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes, and thank you, Jack.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner White.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Jack. And will you please present the second item?
Yes, thank you. The second agreement is with the University of California, Berkeley Transportation Sustainable Research Center, or TSRC, to provide preparation and implementation services. TSRC will provide assistance with the following scope of work: developing the project evaluation plan, development of survey, focus group, interview research protocols, and institutional review board, conduct evaluation and report results, provide results to be included in the evaluation report to the United States Secretary of Transportation. With that, staff seeks authorization for the chair to execute agreement number 567 with TSRC in the amount of $75,000 to provide preparation and implementation services related to the project evaluation plan, and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jack. Terry Ann, are there any comments from or questions from board members? Hearing none or seeing none. Terry Ann, did we receive any written public comment?
No written public comment.
And are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item at this time? Please raise your hand. And
No hands raised.
seeing no public comment or no board comment, great job on your report, Jack. May I have a motion?
I so moved to
Glover.
second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Glover and a second by Commissioner Arnrich. Terry Ann, thank you for calling the vote.
Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Yes. Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer,
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Terry Ann, and thank you again, Jack, for your report. And we'll look forward to seeing you again for the third item at the June meeting.
Thank you.
Moving on, our next item on the agenda is an action item presented by Ivan Ramirez to discuss an amendment and task order with WMH for environmental and final design services on the Interstate 680 State Route 4 interchange improvements, Phase 1 and 2A project. And Ivan.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Ivan Ramirez, Director of Construction. And as you stated, Madam Chair, this is an action item. Before I get into the particulars of the item, I'm going to give you a brief presentation about what the project entails and also what this task order will actually be doing that you're approving this evening. So let me very quickly change, and hopefully you're able to see my screen. Can you confirm that, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the project that we're talking about here. Is the interchange of State Route 4 and Interstate 680. As you guys know, as the board knows, this is at the heart of the county where we have major intersection between the main road going east-west on the county and going north-south on the county. And here's how the project has been divided into different phases because the money to do it all in one single project is just not there. And the yellow here, which extends from here all the way out to past State Route 242, that is the project that is currently under construction. It's the widening of State Route 4. That project should be completed before the end of the year, and major changes coming up here in the summer. The projects that we're talking about here today is Phase 1, which is here in the blue. That's basically providing a new connector ramp between northbound 680 and westbound 4. It would also provide a slip ramp onto Pacheco Boulevard, and it will also have a auxiliary lane extending all the way to Morello. You're also going to have part of Phase 2, which is extending this lane over here, the collector ramp. Into the future, as funding comes available, we're going to have Phase 4, which is delineated here in the purple, extending all the way over here, coming around here. Also, we're going to have the green, well, that will be Phase 5, and so on. So here's an up close of the project that we're talking about. Again, we're going to have an auxiliary lane, slip lane. We're going to have the collector extended here. We're also going to have metering ramps to make sure that the main flow through this intersection is continuous to run well, and that's what we're going to have those metering ramps. And in addition to that, since we're putting this connector ramp, we're going to get rid of this loop ramp. That is what part of the reason why we create so much backup here is because people are trying to navigate those closed loops. So this is the total project cost for Phases 1 and 2A, and the environmental is basically complete. The phase that we're talking about, it's $26 million. This project is primarily funded through Regional Measure 3. As the board members are aware, that's currently caught up in litigation. Therefore, the money is not available. So the staff competed for $18 million of the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, and he was able to receive $18 million. And in addition to that, the board approved a letter of no prejudice so that Measure J can be used to complement the additional money needed for the design phase. And hopefully as Regional Measure 3 becomes available, that money will come back to the authority. Right away in utilities is $14 million, and construction is $196 million. And again, that's only for Phase 1 and 2A. So that's a significant construction project that the authority has undertaken. This is the schedule as it is right now. We're going to start design pretty soon. We're going to do a supplemental project report and also some revalidation of some environmental requirements. Nothing major is expected there. And right away is expected to begin later this year, but of course that's depending on funding coming in. We would not be able to do any physical work until we have money, but we'll definitely advance what is going to be required to get that going. And the schedule as it is right now shows that we're going to have construction beginning hopefully in early 2025. So with that, if there are any questions about the phases, I'll be happy to take. Other than that, I will go into the action item.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? I'm not seeing any hands up.
Okay, very good. So back in September of 28, the authority approved 6 firms from an on-call list. One of those firms was William Hadaya. And at that time, a contract was awarded for $5 million with no specific task because there was no money available. That contract was extended again in 2018. And then again in 2020 for termination date of October of 2022. And when it was extended in 2020, then that's when the scope that we're talking about today came into play, which was conducting the revalidation of the environmental document and preparing the final PS&E. So at this point, the staff seeks authorization for the chair to execute agreement, amendment number 2 to agreement number 503 and task order number 1 with William Hadaya in the amount of $11,378,167 for a new total agreement value of $16,278,167 to provide environmental revalidation, final design, and bid support services, and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. This amendment will extend the agreement termination date from October 24, 2022 to December 31st, 2024. Again, I have open to any questions.
Thank you. So any questions or comments on the motion?
I'd make that staff recommendation motion, but I'm not reading it again. Ivan did it too well.
He did it very well.
Those glasses look cool, Ivan. That reflection makes you look straight out of Hollywood.
Terry Ann, were there any written public comments on this item?
No written public comments.
Thank you. And are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? If you would raise your hand. I'm not seeing anything.
No public comment.
Okay, so do I have a motion? I believe.
I moved it.
Okay, so do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Kelly. So we have a motion by Commissioner Hudson and a second by Vice Chair Kelly. Terry Ann, will you please do the roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnrich?
Yes.
Commissioner Butt?
Yes.
Commissioner Glover?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchoff?
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Chair Geringer?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Terry Ann. And Ivan, thank you very much for all the work that you're doing on that project and also for that very well done report. And
thank you.
And then thank you to all the staff for getting us through our regular agenda items. We do not have any discussion items this evening for the Planning Committee. Moving on to correspondence. We don't have any correspondence. Thank you, Terry Ann and Lindsay and others for providing the handouts that we received earlier today. Your committee reports were provided and hopefully you read those. Moving on to authority board and staff comments and chair report. I don't have a report. I'm sure that the executive director will report out on our meeting with the Caltrans executive team. It was actually the whole team and lots of alignment of priorities. And I do just want to give a shout out to Tim for all the work that he's doing, going out doing fireside chats with agencies throughout the county, and making sure that he is meeting with our partners throughout the state and region to make sure that they know what CCTA is up to and where there could be opportunities to partner. And then moving on to B, are there any reports from commissioners and ex officio representatives? Just quickly, I will note that Commissioner or Representative Worth had to leave the meeting for another meeting, but noted that she did not have any updates that couldn't wait until next time. Anyone else have any commissioners? Commissioner Haskew.
Yes, I attended my first CalCog meeting and tried desperately to understand everything that was going on. We did have a review of legislative bills and an early announcement of the governor's revise, which apparently is going to be revised again. But we looked at the budget, and I have one fun thing, which is they have letters, articles that they like, and the one I got to do the first is about bicycling, and if you're a Spotify person and you're a bicyclist, calcog.org/May.15.bike-month playlist is the place to go. That's my report.
Thank you. We may have to have you send that to Terry Ann to send out, but Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, I'm trying, I don't have it like the wave, I just don't have it, But I wanted to bring this up while Tim and Peter are on the line, and Newell in particular. Every time I get a legislative report at the Air District or whichever committee it is, it just seems like more and more this state wants to pour money into electric buses. And I don't know how, at first I tried to get Traffics to do it, but I mean, nobody wants to jump through hoops. But I swear things have changed so much that if we don't do it, I think we're kicking ourselves. And I'm wondering if there's any way just to sit down and say, can we act as the agency? Is there something we can do before we find out that oops, we got to do it and we don't have the money to do it? If that makes any sense.
Tim.
Yeah, I can respond to that, Commissioner Hudson. So very, very good question. And we are actually coordinating with our transit operators in Contra Costa County. I was talking with Rick Ramesher last week. I also been talking to Michael Tree. Both of us actually have a meeting with Chad Edison on Friday to position ourselves for bus electrification along the 680 corridor through the additional $1 billion that the governor's May revised budget has in there for $1 billion for rail connectivity. And so we're looking towards the transit intercity rail program to tap into those funds. But we also have a meeting once a month just because we want to kind of take a bigger role in transit and kind of help with coordination and regional coordination among our transit operators. We are actually having a monthly meeting with our transit operators, and Commissioner Worth is actually participating in that as far from MTC perspective, as well as Chair Geringer, to help kind of support what's happening with the Blue Ribbon Task Force. And the conversation is coming up in terms of who's going to take the lead, to really help coordinate a lot of the regional electrification efforts. For example, we had a fireside chat with Westcat on Tuesday, and Charlie Anderson actually brought up this very thing about that you have Solano Transportation coming into Contra Costa County with their own ideas about how to electrify their fleet, where our transit operators are really looking towards hydrogen is really the primary fuel source for transit zero emission buses. And so we are actually coordinating right now to develop a plan. And we're developing a kind of a one-pager white paper right now to develop this integrated transit plan that will address this coordination issue among electrification and zero emission buses in the county, as well as the other transit operators. And so we are actively working on how to align the transit operators together, because each transit operator is actually doing their own things. And so as we're doing these fireside chats with Tri-Delta Transit and WestCat, each of them are all doing their own things. And so really it takes upon CCTA kind of stepping in as a big, more regional role to coordinate all of this and make sure that we have interoperability. We got the right stations, the right partners at the table to make sure this is all working together into the future. So we're on top of it, and we're definitely coordinating that among our transit operators.
And the right pieces, Tim. I mean, the hydrogen works when you're going constantly, but when you have something like traffics where you don't have to have it 24 hours a day, I mean, the electric works, and they're just gaga about this electric. We can't wait to give you money. And I hate to see it end up in a county that's on my bad side right now that will be nameless because of RENA. But I mean, somebody's got to jump in there in the middle and figure out how to get these grants while the money's there. And it's good, right? I've never seen so much money. This is a huge jump on that Carl Moyer program from like 90 to 243 million. This is a good time.
Thank you. And thank you, Dave, for queuing that up. Commissioner Arnridge.
I just want to echo what Tim said, and I think this is a new area and a new leadership role for CCTA, and I really appreciate Tim stepping up in this. Dave was just mentioning traffic. So in traffics, it's a South County program. Congestion Relief Agency runs 26 buses a day during the school year to create, and we eliminate about 1.2 million car trips a year. You know, those buses cost, because they're school type buses, under $90,000. It started out almost $1 million, $980,000 for a electric bus. That was so far out of reach, even with money. Hydrogen has its advantages, but most important, I think what Tim said, is this is what our agency is. We should be the leader in the county, from AC Transit, all those interfaces, to get us all on the same. The synergy, you know, we have the largest bus manufacturer of the highest quality buses in Alameda County. Gillig Bus Company used to be in San Leandro, is now in Livermore. If we could, they said, just get it up to scale. If we can consolidate, if they're going to produce 500 buses a year, they're 700,000. If they can produce 10,000 buses a year, they're 300,000. It's, you know, so having our agency, as I think we have been in so many areas, be that lead agency of coordination and really seeking the funding to get these going. And maybe we are the keeper of those monies, and that regional agencies, and I think we have a better opportunity. So just to echo Tim, thanks for that, stepping up and, you know, gung-ho on this. Keep going.
Thank you, Commissioner Arnridge. Are there any other comments or reports from commissioners or representatives? Going once.
Chair Geringer, I just wanted to note that Representative Powers also informed me that she had to leave the meeting at 7:30 due to attending another meeting as well.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to our executive staff comments. So Tim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to report out and kind of build upon what Brian and our consultants and partners with K&N on the bonds. We had just some really, really good meetings with the rating agencies today, with S&P and Fitch, and they really received in a really positive way the direction that the board is really taking our goals with the bonds in terms of eliminating the swap, moving everything in the fixed rate. And that was really, really well received. And it's really providing that strong consideration to moving us into AAA rating. And I think the other thing that's kind of also helping us with this is the stability of our revenues through the pandemic is also really strengthening our opportunity to get to a AAA rating as well. We all know that AA plus is essentially a very, very good rating, but it would be great to get the AAA rating for when we go out to the market. And I think it really demonstrates, this whole doomsday approach where, we had to make sure that there was this whole doomsday approach, there was all this instability, and through all of that, CCTA still remained to have stable and strong growth, through that market. And it really is going to, I think, push us over that crest to get to that AAA rating. So really, and Brian and the K&N team, they just did an outstanding job during those meetings. We really do have the A team working on our bonds and our plan for refinance. I also wanted to kind of touch upon some of the fireside chats. As Chair Geringer mentioned, we're kind of making our way through the county, meeting with all of the cities, introducing myself as the new executive director, but more importantly, introducing new staff at the authority. We haven't done a fireside chat since 2018, when I actually started at the authority as the deputy executive director for projects. And so we really wanted to introduce everyone to our new director of planning, John Hong, introduce everyone to Stephanie Hu as the new director of projects, and Lindsay and also Peter, and really make sure that everyone knows who they can reach out to help support and really provide the customer service that we all really tout as a solid reputation with the authority. We also had fireside chats with some of our assembly members, and it's going really, really well. We have some more coming up, but these fireside chats are really to position CCTA for future budget, as well as indicate and stress where our priorities are at for the future, especially not just focusing now, but into future legislative cycles, making sure they know that these are our priorities, this is the direction we're going. And so we've been providing in these fireside chats essentially an overview of everything we're working on, from the EV readiness blueprint, the accessible transportation strategic plan, Innovate 680, Vision Zero. So there's a lot of things that we're working on, and also providing an update on where we're heading with the countywide transportation plan. So we also had a meeting on Tuesday with the Caltrans District Director, Dina Oltwanzi. So she was just recently appointed as the new director of District 4. And I've actually known her for quite some time down from my Orange County SoCal days. So we have some good inroads there. And we met with her and the entire executive team to talk about all of our priorities and how they align with the new direction that the district and Caltrans is going with the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, CAPTI. And so we're really, and there was a lot of good discussion about partnering at Gomentum Station, partnering on our Innovate 680 program, as well as even partnering on some of these transit projects as well, because that again is the direction that the Caltrans is moving into. I've already mentioned that we're having a meeting with Chad Edison on Friday to talk about TRCP funding, specifically talking about the one-seat ride and the electric hydrogen hybrid bus that will go from Martinez down to Dublin. That project is actually a pet project of Chad Edison because it completes that gap in the California State Rail Plan. Also excited to report out from a Glideways update. Their vehicles arrived at Gomentum Station on Monday. So they actually were manufactured by Roush in Michigan. They were developed in 5 months. And so we're actually planning a tour of those vehicles out at Gomentum Station over the next several months. So Terry Ann and I will be coordinating with all of you to get some opportunities for you to ride in those vehicles. And I think it'll be a really good opportunity for those of you who are interested to see what's going on at Gomentum Station as well. Because Gomentum Station has changed quite a bit probably since the last time you've been out there. So we'll be arranging that for those who would be interested, especially obviously with the circumstances that we're in. And then I just also want to give a good shout out to Jack and David McRae and Jake Dunsky and AMG and our partners at UC Berkeley and Verizon. Those agreements that you approved tonight are no small feat. That was a huge undertaking by our team and by our staff to develop the scope of works, develop the fee structures, develop brand new agreements, tying all of the FTA requirements as well as the data management requirements that are part of the grant all together into one agreement. That this team has just been spending countless hours over the last several months pulling all that together. And it's been a really, really interesting process. And this is why people don't get these grants, because it's very complicated. They don't know how to do it. You're doing things in a new and different way. And we really have the team and the leadership and the know-how to really navigate the unknown at CCTA. And that's one of the things that makes us really successful. So really kudos to that team to really pull that together and get that in front of all of you for approval so we can start moving forward on the ADS grant. We are, just so you know, we are preparing for potential in-person meetings on June 16th for the authority board. So Terry Ann and I will be reaching out to you with a survey to kind of understand what your needs and what your requirements will be at the authority boardroom. So we'll be going in there and testing the authority boardroom, making sure we're ready for some sort of hybrid environment. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on the STEM event that we had. Was really truly privileged to participate in the third Girls Lead the Way STEM Day. Even as a virtual event, it was just super impressive and inspirational. Had the opportunity to listen to the first Hispanic women fighter pilot. And I think you would all agree, it's really important that we continue supporting these events and really help prepare the future generations of these careers. And I really got to put a shout out for Lindsay and Fifi. I mean, they're really the heroes here. Lindsay and Fifi really supported and spearheaded this entire event with Chevron and Barry Leeds. And so they are very interested in planning another event this year. And I think Lindsay is really, and I are really looking for additional ways to expand education opportunities through Ignacio Valley High School and also through Gomentum Station. And so we got more to come on that in future meetings. So there's a lot of exciting things going on, and really appreciate all of your continued support for staff and the direction that we're going, and just a real big thank you to the board.
Anything about mobility hubs?
I'm sorry?
Anything about mobility hubs?
The Share Mobility Hubs, we did have a fireside chat with Rebecca Bauer-Cajon, and she did recommend the San Ramon Share Mobility Hub budget request to the budget committee. So that happened last couple of weeks. And so we are still waiting to hear back on the federal earmarks. Obviously, those are being considered by the T&I committee and the appropriation committee. So as soon as we hear on those, I'll definitely report out through an email or something to the authority board. But we were excited that Rebecca Bauer-Cajon is really excited about Share Mobility Hubs. And she got all jazzed about it on our fireside chat. We showed her the visual simulation. And so she was really supportive of that, and to move that forward to the budget committee for consideration from the state budget request.
A lot of money for that too.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions of Tim? Okay, thank you very much, Tim. And I know that's just the tip of the iceberg of all of the things that you have going on. And so thank you very much. So agenda item 13, calendars, they're in your packet. And unless there are any other items for the good of the agency, we will adjourn this meeting at 7:58 and meet again on June 16th at 6 p.m. So have a great evening, and thank you all very much.